What's up, guys? Welcome in to another episode of Loaded Box Vids. Today, we are going to be going over some big name rookies that are entering the NFL this month, actually, just in a few weeks as we're recording this. It is the beginning of April. So very excited to see those guys enter. But today we're going to be looking at Travis Etienne versus Javonte Williams. We're going to be looking at Terrace Marshall versus Rashod Bateman. And then we're going to be doing a head-to-head on those Moores. And we're going to be doing Elijah Moore versus Rondale Moore. But before we jump into the video, Dylan, how you doing?
Yeah, you'd be remiss if you didn't ask me how I was doing.
I would.
There's a certain populace of our fans that just want to hear me say, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk football. I'm really trying to work on something else to say, but at this point, that's all I got.
It's all right, man. You know what? Stick with what you know, right?
Yeah.
But I guess we'll just jump right on into it, and we're going to be talking about Travis Etienne versus Javonte Williams. So we didn't put Najee Harris into this conversation because he's pretty much the consensus 101 for rookie drafts right now, or at least the 101 of running backs for a lot.
He'll go earlier in real life than the other two as well, probably.
Yeah, and I personally still am in love with Travis Etienne, but there are a lot of people putting Javonte Williams over Travis Etienne in their rankings right now. So I kind of thought it was important to highlight these two guys. So first thing we're going to look at is the projected draft capital with them. And I think we can both agree. I think we can all agree that Travis Etienne is probably going to go earlier than Javonte in the NFL draft. I would say that Travis Etienne is probably going to be, if he's not a late first round pick, he's going to be a top 5 pick in the second round. I can't see him falling past that. Whereas Javonte Williams, he's going at the very best, middle of the second, late of the second. I don't see him falling to the third round, but stranger things has happened. I know that running backs are kind of an oddity in the NFL draft these days just because of...
Yeah, they go all over the place, don't they? Some go early, some go in the fourth round and end up being starters. It's crazy.
Exactly. Meanwhile, a few years ago, we had Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey both go in the top 10. And a year before that, Ezekiel Elliott went number 4. After that, Saquon Barkley went pretty high up. So I think we can both agree that Travis Etienne's probably going to enter the NFL draft, or enter the NFL with a better draft capital. In terms of college production, they were both pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But I don't know, for me, Travis Etienne, he's so phenomenal. Between his sophomore and junior year, he rushed for over 3,200 yards. He had over 40 rushing touchdowns over the course of those 2 seasons. I mean, people are so upset that he's coming off of his 900 yards of his senior year. He's coming off of only 14 touchdowns on the ground. He had 588 receiving yards. Like, I don't really understand what's not to like about Travis Etienne, but
we all were beating the drums for him to potentially come into the draft last year, and he was regarded as a top running back prospect then. It wasn't like he was a Joe Schmo when he was flirting with the idea of coming out of college a little early and going to the NFL. He would have been one of the top backs taken on Dynasty boards. He probably would have made a point in the NFL by now, and at this point, he's either the consensus 2 or 3. So nothing's really changed. If anything, he's helped himself by staying. He finished college, and I don't understand the hate. I see it on Twitter too. It's kind of awkward. I mean, there's no combine this year, but Etienne's stats are not stats, but his times and stuff are better than Javonte. They also aren't the same kind of running back. Like, completely. Like, there's some differences. Obviously, in speed, there's quite a big difference if you look at the times.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that if Etienne entered the draft last year, he very well could have gone to the Chiefs instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because, they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire because of, he's this slippery, agile guy that's really reliable out of the backfield. Etienne is literally that, plus an even better runner. So he could have been the rookie 101 overall last year. Now, I know I'm talking a lot about Etienne. It doesn't mean that I don't like Javonte Williams. It's just I personally
want to talk about, in my opinion, for Etienne than there is Williams.
Yeah, and I agree, because with Javonte Williams, I mean, his stats are good. I'm looking at him right now. He had over 1,100 yards on the ground. He had 19 touchdowns, had 305 receiving yards with an additional three touchdowns there. we know that he is a legitimate dual threat back, but the issue that I have with Javonte is that he's just not agile. He's not very quick. He's not very fast either.
And he's tiny on top of what you just said. He's 5'9" and he's 212 pounds. So a little heavy for 5'9", if I'm being honest. I'm not going to.
Yeah, I mean the guy is a bowling ball. I mean he can run people over, but
yeah, he's gonna run through you.
exactly. But that worries me going into the NFL. It's just look at like Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. They're both phenomenal running backs, and they have a very similar style. Now Javonte Williams is a better receiver than both of those guys. But what's the likeliness of him turning out to be a Nick Chubb or a Derrick Henry? Those kind of guys in today's NFL, they really don't see the same success at the same rates as guys like Travis Etienne, who come in, they're agile, they're quick, they're just proven.
No, there's kind of like the unicorns for running backs, but I agree. I think most of them, like the ideal running back is probably a cross of Kamara or McCaffrey. That's what the NFL executives, in my opinion, and you probably agree with that. That's what you want. You want a guy who is the elitist at being able to be shifty, make guys miss, and also both those guys I named are probably two of the best pass catching backs in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what you're going to get in Travis Etienne. I think he is the best pass catcher coming into the NFL this year, out of the backfield at least. There's just he has drawn a lot of comparisons in the past to Alvin Kamara, and a lot of people are saying, well, that's a ceiling comparison. But guess what? Literally every comparison out there is a ceiling comparison. No one's going to say Travis Etienne's probably just going to be like a Tariq Cohen kind of guy just because this, and that. Like no one's saying that. Everyone is shooting for the moon on these types of guys. And that's why Javonte Williams is drawing comparison to those bigger guys, or even like an Aaron Jones type, because he's that dual threat, bigger guy, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. For me, if I have to choose between these two guys, I'm taking Etienne. And no, I'm not going to lie. There is a scenario where I'm taking Javonte on draft day. Like if Javonte Williams ends up in Arizona, which is my personal favorite landing spot for a running back this year, Williams arguably might even shoot up to be my 101 because that's how good the landing spot is. Conversely, if Travis Etienne lands in like Pittsburgh or Buffalo, where he's in a crowded running back room, like he's probably going to fall a bit from me. But from a pure talent basis, I'm going to pick Etienne between these two.
I fully agree. I like the other two top backs more than Javonte. I still think he's probably the third best on my list given talent, maybe fourth. I'm starting to ride the Michael Carter train, but that's another video. So
well, we're definitely going to go. We're definitely going to be going over Michael Carter the next time we do this, because I think next week we're going to go over a couple more of these guys. But yeah, stay tuned for that one. Anyway, we'll move on to the very next one, and it's going to be Rashod Bateman versus Terrace Marshall. And in my opinion, this one is so exciting to look at. Terrace Marshall is my wide receiver 4 in terms of rookie wide receivers. Rashod Bateman is my rookie wide receiver 5. I think
right next to each other.
I think both of these guys are absolutely tremendous. And it's funny because I was not high on Rashod Bateman in the slightest bit this time, even 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, you were actually almost negative on him, if I dare.
Yeah, I had him all the way down as like my wide receiver 8, wide receiver 9. And granted, it's a very deep class. There are probably 10 to 12 receivers that I do legitimately like.
And there's like 6 or 7 that might go in the first round in real life.
Yeah, but so Rashod Bateman, I've definitely come around to him more. One of the things I will say about Bateman, though, and correct me if you disagree, but Bateman to me might be the safest wide receiver in this draft, but he also might be the least exciting. And what I mean by that is he's got the safest floor outside of Jamar Chase. I think Rashod Bateman has the safest floor. I think he is going to be almost bust proof, but I do think we could see a receiver that's better for real life than fantasy. I don't know if he could be a team's wide receiver 1 in the NFL, which obviously means he cannot be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy purposes. I think he might. I think he could be one of those guys that he's more of your safe wide receiver 3 plays in a lot of weeks. I think he's going to be one of those guys you can rely on him to get your 4 or 5 catches for 50 or 60 yards, and he'll come away with your, 11 to 14 points. But I don't see, he does everything good, but there's not anything spectacular about his game, if that makes sense.
The only thing that jumps off is the fact that he had that 4.39 40 time that we just saw before we started this, and
He is pretty fast.
6'2" and over 200 pounds. So that's a big boy running that fast.
Well, and it's kind of funny though, because him and Marshall, they're the same height. I think the only difference, or Marshall is like half an inch taller than him and 5 pounds lighter than him.
Yeah,
but
Marshall's
they're extremely.
6'2". They're both 6'2", but yeah, Marshall's 5'8", 6'2", 5'8", 205 pounds, and Bateman is,
I think he's like 210.
210 pounds. Yeah, 5 pounds.
Yeah, it is so, it's so incredible like how similar these guys are. And Terrace Marshall also ran a 4.4 40. So like these guys are so tremendously similar in terms of stature and measurement, but the way that they play the game is definitely different. Terrace Marshall, in my opinion, he's going to come in and he is going to be, I think that he could be a team's wide receiver 1. I think he could be a true X receiver. I definitely think that he's not as safe as Bateman, but I don't think that he's unsafe. I think he's going to be a very reliable red zone target. At the very least, his rookie year, I think he's going to be a very reliable red zone target. And I think within 2 or 3 years, he could develop into that X role for an NFL team.
It's just always scary with the fast guys. We've seen so many speedsters not make it in the NFL. And I'm not labeling either of these guys solely as speedsters. But you know where I'm going with this. Like the John Rosses, the people are already sour on Henry Ruggs last year. Those kind of guys, the guys that come in, we know they're fast in college. We see them fast in college. They're fast as shit in college. We're like, I could not catch that guy if I was on a motorcycle kind of fast, You watch them the pro days. Well, now it's more just privatized because of COVID. And you have a small concern, like you said, because landing spot affects it. Because if they go to a team that has no other options, they might struggle because they might have to do that kind of role. Or if they slot into a team that has another option, they can be paired with someone, then they might be good. Obviously, we don't know what they're going to do. We'll know that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, it's kind of hard to pair these two because the stats literally say the same thing. So what I'm trying to get at is personally, I'd rather have the guy that runs better routes. It's a better football mind because I think that would go the longer way. Because literally, John Ross is the poster child for like someone who ran fast as shit in college and did not do shit in the NFL.
Right. Yeah, and I think one of the things I hate that I sound so one-sided, but I if you haven't figured it out already, I do prefer Terrace Marshall over these two, and that
as do I. But I've never hated not that you hated Bateman, but I figured Bateman was like in my top 6 or 7 the entire time.
Yeah,
he's still there. So and Marshall was also like in that range. Like they're 4 or 5 for you. They were like 6, 7 for me like weeks ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to me, it's a toss-up, and that's copping out. But generally, like in real life, if the Eagles drafted either one, I would not be mad.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to think that when your rookie draft gets here, you're picking in, I don't know, the mid to late first round. These are both guys that I'd probably expect to go somewhere between 107 and 110, maybe 111 in most one quarterback rookie drafts out there.
One of them I feel like might fall to like 201 or 202, depending upon your draft because of the
not if I'm in your league.
Yeah, it's true. Or me. But I mean, I hope I'm not sounding crazy. I think you could see that though, because there's always that one player that falls every year.
For sure. So before we move on, Rashod Bateman, his most impressive season was obviously his sophomore year. He had 60 catches over 13 games, averaged over 20 yards a catch, and had 11 touchdowns. Terrace Marshall, arguably his most impressive season was actually without Joe Burrow. So when Joe Burrow was still around back in 2019, Terrace Marshall was behind both Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson on the pecking order. I mean, Terrace Marshall was a sophomore, as was Jamar Chase. But even in that massive competition, he still had 13 touchdowns. But in 2020, without Joe Burrow, with LSU being a dumpster fire, to put it lightly, on offense,
it's very accurate.
In 7 games, he had over 700 yards and he had 10 touchdowns over those 7 games. I mean, Terrace Marshall, he was in a really bad situation his junior year, and he, in my opinion, made the absolute most out of it as possible.
I agree with you on Marshall, but I do like both of them, and mine is simply because I've kind of always linked them together anyway, and I don't know. It's just, this is genuinely just a gut feeling. And I know it's not the most scientific or the most educated, but I just think Terrace Marshall, obviously landing spot helps, but I think he'll be the better NFL player. I mean, you could come back and say I'm an idiot, play this tape back, be like, yo, this guy stupid. But no, that's what I'm going with. I'm riding with my guns as well.
And I gotta say, I think if only one of them goes in the first round, I do think it's going to be Bateman, because
Bateman,
like I was saying,
hype
he is more well-rounded. I think he's going to make a really good addition to an NFL roster. But Terrace Marshall, he has plenty of capabilities of going in the first round. If not, he's going to go very, very early in the second round. I like both of these guys, but at the end of the day, I would go Marshall.
I agree. It's just going to be interesting. If you think back to last year, there are several receivers who were taken in the first round, and 2 of them didn't pan off for their respective teams yet. So it's going to be curious to see who this year in real life is going to be like last year's Rager and last year's Ruggs, and then so forth. And who was last year's Lamb, who kills it? You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. And obviously we'll have to revisit a lot of this stuff.
I'm sure it's all
after the draft is over, but right now it's all theory craft. It's all just in good fun.
All we got, baby.
Exactly. So we'll move on to the last one of the day, and it's Moore versus Moore, Elijah Moore versus Rondale Moore. And you and I have both been pretty sour on Rondale Moore, and I've gotten a lot of flack on that. And I know you're not as involved on the fantasy side of Twitter as I am.
No, you unfortunately, I'm pulling it up right now. I have both other times, but no, yeah, you are way more involved than I am, and I see the outrage when you tweet stuff, and it's quite comical.
Because some people take things very seriously on there.
Dude, if it's on the internet, it's true, don't it?
Exactly. But Rondale Moore, obviously, everyone is going off of his freshman year.
I didn't know his time was that fast. Jesus.
He's blazing fast.
But I just had the John Ross speculative warning talk.
Well, Rondale Moore is blazing fast. He jumps insanely high. I think his vertical was something ridiculous. I don't have it off the top of my head, but his vertical was absolutely absurd for a guy that's 5'9". Actually, I think he measured in at like 5'7" on his pro day. So he's even shorter than that. Unlike a lot of people, I don't have any issues with his height. I don't have any issues with his weight, because he's going to be a slot receiver / gadget guy. And you really don't, I'm not worried about size for a guy like that.
So I pulled up all the times. I found a list. You did a great job pairing, because literally the top 40 times that are on record for this year is Anthony Schwartz, wide receiver, Auburn, who ran a 4.26, by the way.
He's fast as hell.
We have to go do some research for this guy for the people of YouTube. But second is Rondale Moore at 4.29. And if you jump down, 5th is Elijah Moore at 4.35. So yeah, once again, they are similar players. I mean, granted, the time is still 0.06 apart, but
yeah, they're incredibly similar. I mean, Rondale Moore, like I was saying, he measured in, I'm pretty sure, at 5'7", but before that he was listed as 5'9". Elijah Moore was also listed as 5'9". Previously, Rondale Moore was listed at 180. Previously, Elijah Moore was listed at 185. I mean, these two guys are very similar. They're both going to be in a slot role. The thing that I'm worried about with Rondale Moore, it's not his size. A lot of people, when I say that I don't like Rondale Moore, they're just like, oh, what is he, too small for you? No, that's not the case at all. My issue with him is that we saw a phenomenal showing his freshman year in Purdue. 114 receptions as a freshman, over 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, and even had 213 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. They wrote him in to seemingly every play. They made sure that this guy had the ball because he was an absolute force to be reckoned with. He's insane in the open field. Like we were saying, he's fast as all hell. He's awesome. Here's my issue with him. We haven't seen anything like that from him since 2018. And you can argue that we kind of saw it in 2019. He had a 4-game span where he was just short of 400 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. That's a very small sample size. And I will never take a 3 or 4 game sample size and use it as an extreme benefit to a player. Then you look at 2020, he had 35 receptions in 3 games, which is ridiculous. That's but crazy. Like I was saying, it's because Purdue they wrote him into every single play. They knew what they had in him. They knew that he was awesome. He was an awesome college football player, but unless he gets written into every single play at the next level, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard for him to show up and show out with these absolute massive numbers. Plus, we haven't seen a full season from him since 2018.
I'm going to go back and edit this little 50-second window out. So when people yell at you on Twitter, I can say, look, he's not hating the player. He's just going by what he's seen in college.
Exactly.
And the fact that this player is involved in every single snap and every single catch.
That's the thing. There's nothing. I don't hate his game at all, but I hate the small sample size. And I absolutely hate that he was, one way you can look at it is, wow, he's so good that the coaches had to write him into every single thing. But the other way you can look at it is that's not going to happen in the NFL. So what exactly are we going to get from him,
No, I agree. And you're basically doing, it's not football. It's funny. I'm wearing a baseball hat. This is a thing baseball fans always cry about. A lot of guys play for a long time and they get knocked. Oh, it's kind of like the NFL. Matt Ryan is the example of someone who people don't think is good, and he's a stat piler because he's played for so long and had Julio Jones. So you're basically so you're loosely saying the same thing because of his college career. You're not doubting him as an athlete, but you're saying his stats look so great and he looks so great because he's incorporated in every single fucking thing.
Right.
Which the other Moore, not so much. And they're both fast. I just proved it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This class, I think, just has the 2 receivers that everyone's gravitating towards. There's the Jamar Chase, and then there's Devontae Smith. And then after that, you can make the argument, honestly, and I won't call you crazy. There's several guys that could be the 3rd guy, in my opinion. It just depends upon where you stand. Even the 1 and 2, if someone tells me Devontae Smith's the number 1 receiver, I'm not going to call them crazy. Jamar Chase didn't play a whole year, so it's something to be noted, and he's not going to play for a while because the training camp won't start till the summer. But in terms of this battle, I'm not copying you. I genuinely like the players that you like more. I didn't even think about that aspect.
Which more do you like more?
This is indifferent, to be honest. I don't know if either one will be as good as people think they are in the NFL. If I'm being completely honest, not right. To be like that guy. I'm not saying they'll be bust, but I don't know if they'll be worth their draft in real life.
See, I think that both of them are going to be slot receivers at the next level. I don't think
that's what I'm saying. And I have such a problem with slot receivers because slot receivers should not be drafted.
Let me ask you this. If one of them lands with the Green Bay Packers, how pumped are you going to be over that guy?
Okay, pretty pumped.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely certain circumstances. But I just got done talking about Rondale. I'm going to highlight Elijah Moore here. And I'm going to do a little head-to-head. So as I was saying, Rondale Moore's best season was his freshman year, 1,258 yards, averaged 11 yards per reception. And that was off of 114 receptions. Now, Elijah Moore, his best season was actually in 2020 as a junior. He only had 86 catches, but that was over only 8 games, which means he was on a higher pace. He was on pace to have more receptions than Rondale Moore had Elijah Moore played 13 games. Elijah Moore also had almost 3 full yards on average more than Rondale Moore. And he also had a slightly better touchdown rate. So the way I'm looking at it is, now granted, one of these guys is a junior, which is Elijah Moore. And then Rondale Moore was a freshman when all this was going on. So you have to look at the breakout age, and yeah, you have to admire that about Rondale Moore. But these two guys, they're extremely similar. And I think Elijah Moore is just going to be a little bit safer because he has a bit of a better size. He's got a bigger sample size to go off of. We've seen it more recently from him. It's not, 2.5 years removed. It's, I don't know. And you got to think that when the real draft comes, they're both going to be picked pretty similar. I think they're both going to be, second round picks, maybe early third round picks at the very worst. Like they're both going to be good.
No, I agree. I was muted for a second. And sample size thing, I value that a lot in college. One of the best examples of recently in history of not sample size in college is Mitch Trubisky and Dwayne Haskins. Both of them did not play quarterback for very long in college, and they stunk in the NFL. They were thrust into there. And there's tons of receivers and running backs and tight ends over the history that have, and any position that don't play enough in college, and they get drafted because they show out and then they get in a bad situation. The reason Mikey knows, the reason I'm so high on Cam Akers is he played forever in college. He was behind Dalvin Cook. People forget that. He didn't even get to actually start until Dalvin Cook was gone.
Right.
So Cam Akers had a Rappaport. He had a lot of time. That's why I prefer the one more, because he has more time in, I was going to say NFL. He has more time in college. It's kind of like why Trevor Lawrence is so sexy for a prospect, because he has a shit ton of time in college as a starter.
Yeah. Yeah. Winning the national championship as a freshman will do that for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of the sample size, I mean, Rondale Moore over 3 years, he played in 20 games. Over that same amount of time, Elijah Moore played in, looks like 31 games. Like that's a big deal. 13 games in college, 13 extra games in college. That's a big deal.
Almost a full season in the NFL.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do I like Rondale Moore? Yes. But I won't be able to draft him in any of my leagues, because a lot of the people who like Rondale Moore think that he is a low end first round rookie pick or a high end second round rookie pick. And the risk reward it's not there for me. I think the risk heavily outweighs the reward there. If Rondale Moore were to fall to the 206 or the 207 in my league, I would trade up. I would do whatever I could to trade up and get him. But that's around where you're going to get Elijah Moore, around that 206, 207, middle of the second round slot. And I think like I said, they're both extremely similar, but Elijah Moore is going to carry significant more value. And I mean, they're just so similar. I'd rather have the guy that I can get cheaper.
Yes, I agree. And I also agree with you that I will not be drafting either of them, because I pick in our league together. I pick 4th and 12th, and I'm not picking either of them on those picks. So
yeah, well, spoiler alert for you. I think I have 205 or 206. If one of these guys is there, I'll probably pull the trigger depending on what I do with the first pick. But
no, I agree with you. I'm just hoping that one of the other guys we named earlier falls to 112, and that's who I'll draft at 112 respectively.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in our draft. We'll have to let everyone know how that goes. And
probably poorly.
I get to pick 2 picks before you in the first, so I'll get to snake you a little bit there at the end.
And I'll say it here. I mean, I think I've already hinted at it, but I want to talk about him. If you watch our videos more than one, you probably have an idea of who I'm taking at 104. And if you don't, I'll give you a hint. He's a tight end. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, no secrets there. No secrets there. Spoiler alert, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's gonna do it here for us today on Loaded Box Vids. I definitely want to do this again next week with some of the other guys. I know we were bouncing ideas back and forth about, other head-to-head matchups we can do. And I think it's a lot of fun to do, but
no, it's interesting.
In summary, we both agreed on pretty much everything here today. We're both significantly higher on Etienne than we are on Javonte Williams. Terrace Marshall and Rashod.
We're not the best people to do this, by the way. Mikey and I are kind of a hive mind in sports. We have relatively the same opinions. So.
We do, but we go to battle. We go to battle on some things. So.
Yes, that's true.
And I have a sneaking suspicion there's a couple things we're going to go to battle on next week, but we'll see when the time gets here. But yeah, we picked Terrace Marshall together over Rashod Bateman, not by leaps and bounds like Travis Etienne versus Javonte. They're both extremely similar, but Terrace Marshall seems to have the higher ceiling for us, and we like that more. And speaking of more, we're taking Elijah Moore over Rondale Moore, and I can't get enough of these jokes. I need more
You
and more
more.
of it. We need more, exactly. But I hate myself for making that joke, and we should end this now. So, with that being said, thanks for tuning in, guys. Feel free to subscribe, comment, like, do your stuff. Follow Dylan on Twitter, follow myself on Twitter, follow Loaded Box on Twitter, and of course, go onto our website, check out our most recent articles, our rankings, our podcasts, everything of the sort. I'm going to be releasing an article a little later this week on why Jamar Chase should in no way, shape, or form be the rookie 101. So if that just angered you or that intrigued you, check out the website in a few days because that'll be up there. But again, thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys next week.